What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to Knives of the Round Table. My name is Marco, and today we're going to be talking about the Medford knife and tool, Smooth Criminal. And this is kind of an un-Medford like Medford. It's kind of a little bit of a strange one because for the most part, Medford knives have, I think the blade is very Medford. I think that's on par. But most Medfords will have a fairly heavy titanium handles. They are not very ergonomic. They are, the action is on phosphor bronze washers, and it's very, it's smooth action, but typically not very fidgety action. So this is kind of the exception to that. So let me give you a tour of the knife of what we got here. We have an S45 VN, as you can see by the 45 right there under the Medford knife and tool logo. The 45 indicates that it's an S45 VN. It's a drop point. And you can see it's got the classic grounding lines of a Medford knife and tool that are always kind of perpendicular to the cutting edge. That's because they hand grind all of their blades. This is a button lock, so it has the action of a button lock, but it's also a flipper tab. So, and this particular version has the black PVD aluminum. You've got a bent pocket clip, and you've got flamed hardware on this one. You do have a little bit of a net lanyard in the back, and this is kind of what you've got. Let me show you just the size of the blade here. So you've got a sub 3-inch blade. Okay, so it's one of the smaller Medford knives that you can get. So it's kind of a departure from what Greg Medford does all of the time with, if you've got the Micro Praetorian, the Marauders, the Genesis, all of those. This is kind of its own little thing. So let me give you some size comparisons here. Here it is against the Para 2, and here it is against the Para 3. So it's a smaller knife for sure. So as you can see, it's much smaller than both the Para 2 and the Para 3. And even when closed, it folds down to a fairly compact shape. It's not thin. It's in thickness. You can see here, it's actually a little bit thicker than the Para 3, but because of that kind of milling that they did here, and then the milling down here, and the cutter for the finger, and kind of the same thing on the back, it's not rounded, but it gives you a little bit of a contour in that direction that makes it feel like a slimmer knife in the hand, even though it's a little bit thicker than the Para 3. I think the Para 3, because it has flat scales that just go from this face to that face on a almost 90-degree angle with a little bit of rounding. Because of that, I think this one feels bigger in the hand than it is. So that is the Benchmade bug out. This is the mini bug out here. So lengthwise is right in between those two, probably closer to the full-size bug out. It is taller, and it is chunkier kind of in all directions, but it's certainly in between those two lengths for sure. Now let's talk ergonomics on this one, and the ergonomics on this one, I've got to say, are pretty darn good. The group that you have here with this finger cutout, and then the fact that they've done these kind of different levels of grinding, of layering down up here, the fact that they've done this corner one, the one in the back, and the same thing, your hand really just kind of wraps around everywhere. You see my finger lands naturally here, and then these two in the back here, and even here, this little area is perfect for my finger. So this knife fits my hand really, really, really well. I do feel a little bit of the pocket clip. It ramps up at the tip here, so I feel it a little bit, especially when I have it on a hammer grip. On a saber grip, my hand shifts position a little bit, and the pocket clip ends up being, well, you can see where it's landing right there. You can see where I'm trying to hold it hard so you can see it. This little red lines, that's where it lands. But in a saber grip, that kind of goes away because this goes to the hollow of my hand. I don't know if you can tell where that's landing. So in a saber grip, that kind of disappears. In a hammer grip, you do have a little bit of hot spot on the pocket clip, but the rest of the scales, the handle, it's actually fairly ergonomic. It feels really nicely in the hand. It's a lighter knife, and if you know me, I like my knives to be a little bit heavier. This is certainly not it. So it's milled internally. You can let me see if I can show you. I don't think you can see with the black. Actually, you know what? It might not be milled internally. It just feels so light. So maybe it's the aluminum. But it certainly feels a little bit front heavy. The balance is where it's supposed to be, but it does feel a little bit front heavy, even though the blade is not as thick as other Medford knife and tool kind of blades that he does. Cutting with this is fairly good. The blade thickness is probably in the neighborhood of the, let me see, let's see here. Yeah, it's probably very similar to the Parrot 2. Now what you get with the Parrot 2 is a full flat grind, so it's much slicier. The Parrot 2 is much slicier just because of the full flat grind. But, so I think this one's slicier, but the thing is behind the edge, I think this one's a little bit better. And the reason for that is because what you have here is a hollow grind. They grind this by hand on a grinder, and those usually have a round grinding wheel. So these are hollow grind. Let me see if I can capture that. Well, hopefully you can tell that it's a hollow grind. So it's a hollow grind, and what you get with a hollow grind is the blade goes like so, and you get, this is fairly thin behind the edge, certainly thinner than a lot of my other Medfords. Probably in the neighborhood of the Slim Midi, probably thereabouts. So I think for the size of knife and for what you might be using it for, I think this is a very good cutter. I think this cuts very well. Certainly, I think S45VN is certainly a step in the right direction. I wish that it was in Magna Cut, but I think they haven't gone full production with Magna Cuts. The only one that I've seen in Magna Cut is a Centurion, a club exclusive that they did for the Slim Midi, which I think I've reviewed in the past. I'll link it in the description. I mean, not in the description. You'll see a little thing right around here. But in any event, I think this cuts very, very well. Now let's talk action, and I think, button locks, but this one in particular, it's very, very drop shutty. There's no blade plate whatsoever, and I believe this one's running on bearings. And the only thing is the detent. It's a little bit strange because I saw a video from Lefty EDC where he's reviewing this knife, and his problem was that the detent was very soft. And in my case, just as I feel it, right? That's not the case. I think this one, I think they've solved that problem. My only issue is that the jimping on the flipper tab is super aggressive. So you feel like it scratches your finger every time you flip it, and it goes to a point, and I don't think that the taper is in the right angle because it's always in a place where it would bother you. You'd almost have to always light switch it all the time for it to not feel sharp. But even then, the jimping is very aggressive, and I think it's overly so. So this should be a very fidgety knife, and obviously you can just push the button lock and deploy it. But I found myself not fidgeting as much just because the flipper tab, it's a little bit too aggressive, at least for my taste. Other than that, I think the action is just you can see where the scale just bounces out of the scale when it's just so free. You're gonna get a similar problem when you do the Grimsmo Norseman, where when it drops shut and it bounces. You don't have that problem in all drop shutty knives, but it's certainly something that happens in this one. The closing action is just as drop shut as can probably get without a loose blade. Now, fit and finish. So I think Medford Knives does a very good job of their fit and finish. I really do. I felt that, for example, the latest Slim Midi that I bought, this one certainly, the transition between the flat and the grind, they've been doing something where it's rounding out that transition, and it feels like they're doing something different from the earlier knives or from the other knives I have. I don't know what it is that they're doing, but I don't like that the transition is not as crisp from here to here. You know, in some, like I have an Eris that has a really nice transition. I have a Midi Marauder that has a really nice crisp transition. That's not the case here. But overall, I think they do a fairly good fit and finish. And you know, I like the availability of options. You know, you can get this in a red, blue, green, black, and gray colors. You can get any combination of hardware. You can get a lot of stuff on this one, and I think they do it well. I do think that the flipper tab is overly aggressive. This jimping, it's scratchy. It's probably, whatever it pecks in your pocket, it's not just gonna peck it, it's gonna sand it down. This is that aggressive, okay? So I think that the fit and finish is good with certain stuff. I think overall, I think the only thing that bothers me really is this jimping. But in reality, what I think is that this is a better priced Medford. In truth, I've been critical of the price point of Medford knives in the past. I think they're, you know, I understand they're made in America, but there's a lot of knives that are made in America. You know, Chris Reeve, Rick Kinder, a lot of those. I believe those have similar quality. Greg Medford probably would disagree with me. These are hand ground, I'll give him that, but they're production knives anyway. And so I think that the price for this one is actually fairly good. This is, I want to say, $250 to $275, which is not cheap, right? It's still more than you're gonna pay for a pair two or something like that, but it's approaching that neighborhood of what you get for a zero tolerance 0562, for instance, or thereabouts. And I think this is a decent knife. I think this is actually decent value. Certainly, it's a little bit outside of the norm for what you get for a Medford knife, because, for example, you know, call it a micro Praetorian is very much in this neighborhood of size, but a micro Praetorian is pushing $600, and the only difference is really the titanium versus the aluminum. I don't think there's $300 worth of materials in between one and the other. I just don't see it. I'm not a knife maker, right? Probably Greg Medford knows a lot more about knives than I ever will. But from a user standpoint, I think this is really good value, where I think most of other Medford knives, and I own about 5 or 6 of them, okay? I'm guilty of buying things that are not great values. But this one I think is actually fairly decent value. This one is I think the price is correct for this one. Guys, I think I would recommend this one. Button locks are fun. They're fidgety. Again, I do think that hopefully they can reduce the aggressiveness of the jimping, because if you, for example, I carry my phone in the same pocket that I carried my knife. So if my phone sits right here, you know, and this is rubbing against the phone case, this actually will damage the phone case. It's that sharp. So other than that, I think that's my only grievance. I wish that, you know, maybe the pocket clip was a little bit, you know, where it points up and then come back down, not just ramp up, but ramp up and then over, so that the point didn't poke into it. But it's not a bad poke, especially not in a saber grip. Other than that, I think that the ergonomics of this thing are really, really nice. Again, this cutout that they done for the finger, it just guides your hand really nicely to where it's supposed to be. So, guys, hopefully this is helpful to you. Hopefully I've earned your like or your subscription. If I did, then do so. Then like and subscribe. Please don't hit the notification, the little bell. Don't hit that. You'll know where to find my content if you want to see it. Nobody likes to get more emails. That's the truth. But if you want to see some more stuff, then you can come see me whenever you want. Until I see you at the next one. Take care.